Hey, welcome to another episode of Dad Talks. I'm Karl, and this is Jesse.
What's up, Karl?
Dude, we have such a good time these last couple of weeks.
Man, it's been great.
Chatting through these different topics as we're talking about relationships. We're in a series here at Flatirons, all about different types of relationships. And today, wanted to really focus in on parenting. I just did a message about parenting. The most ill-equipped person to do a message
We
on
should
parenting.
apologize to our kids.
Sorry.
We should let our kids actually do this, and they'd be like, "No, that's not how it works."
That's a good idea. We should have the kids cut in. But just like parenting, like let's just state the obvious. Parenting is hard.
It is so hard.
Parenting is hard. But let's like go back to the beginning. So like when you found out you were going to be a dad for the first time, what was your reaction?
We should have used protection.
Yeah.
It just was this thing. We had kids pretty young, and
yeah.
I don't know. Like for us, there was not a like, oh, this is gonna be a perfect time. It's just like let's give this a shot. And so we've got 4 kids, 2 planned, 2 not planned.
There you
and,
go. I won't ask which ones.
It's kind of bookended. Does that make sense?
They'll watch this one day.
Who wants 4 kids?
Yeah.
But I love Ford. I love you. If you're listening to this, he'd never listen to this. But anyways, it's great. But I just remember that moment, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know if I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
How about you? When you first brought Georgia home, what was that like?
So it's shocking when you leave the hospital that they let you leave. That it's because first they have like the low jack thing on the kid, and then they just take it off and they're like, "Here you go, here dum dum,
put it in a car seat,
and you're good.
Good luck."
So like I've never driven slower in my entire life. Right? Jen's in the back with George. I'm in the front, like petrified, but we haven't eaten in like 2 days because hospital food's gross. So we swing by In-N-Out.
Okay.
And I'm going like three, literally maybe 3 to 10 miles an hour. So we get back to our little apartment, and she's still in the car seat, and we just put her on the floor and literally stare at her for 30 minutes.
Yep.
And something to the effect, we're like, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like this, your heart's so filled with love but you're petrified.
Without
I was absolutely petrified. And again, we've both been in ministry already, and had worked with students, worked with kids, but now it's like yours.
Right.
And it's like, oh, I'm definitely going to screw this up.
You're so scared.
Yeah.
You're so tired. And what I found today is I think that with like just culturally, parenthood is the one place that makes us feel so ill-equipped and like we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah.
And like just for people of faith, I think that if I was trying to describe sinfulness to people outside faith world, they'd be like, I'm not sinful. I'm a good person, all this. And actually the word for sin in the Bible, it's that word hamartia, which means I've missed the mark.
Yep.
And I think when I think about like, I survey my life and it's like work and marriage and parenting, all these things. When it comes to parenting, it's the time I feel like I'm not enough.
Yep.
That I don't know what I'm doing and that I've missed the mark. Like I feel like there's something missing from me as a parent. And I think that like just people of faith, we actually have an opportunity to show people how Jesus steps into the places we're not enough and the places we miss the mark in our parenting. And like we're inherently not good enough and he's going to be good enough for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, like you come to the conclusion very quickly. I can't do this on my own.
Yes.
I cannot do this on my own. And I noticed like that was instantly, Jen and I instantly started reaching out to older folks, mentors, because it's like, it's one of those places in life where you will admit your ignorance. And here's what's been interesting is it didn't stop after that first day.
Sure.
Every day. Like I don't think there's now I have teenagers, you have teenagers. Like I'm asking other dads, other parents all the time. Like, how do I do this? Because Fred, my father-in-law, he told me this because one day I'd call him like freaking out, like I don't know what to do, and he goes, I think Georgia was, let's say 5 or 6, and he goes, hey Karl, give yourself a break. This is the first 6-year-old you've ever had,
bro.
Right, bro. It's like, and I was like, oh, you're right. I've never done this. I've never. And every day they get older, it's another day. Like today. It's the first time I've had a 13-year-old and 8 months or whatever she is, man. Like, yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, man, I totally get that. And did you ever get advice from people who have never had kids? Like, I would never let my kids do this. Like crying babies on an airplane.
Oh, 100%. And it's like, even worse than getting advice from people who don't have kids, imagine being the one who's giving advice when you don't have kids.
Have you done that before?
Jess, my first message in church, like I'm 21 years old, 22 years old. I think my senior pastor did this on purpose. He's like, "Hey, Carl, you're going to get to teach in big church, right?" I'm like, "Oh man, like, let's go." What's the topic? Parenting. I go, "Hey man, I'm not a parent.
Right.
I don't know anything about parenting. I cannot imagine how dumb I sounded standing in front of those 300-400 people like, this is how you should raise a kid. This is what you should do.
Is it online? Can somebody find it
no,
online?
This is back in the day. It's like, but yeah, I remember getting that same kind of advice from friends or coworkers who didn't have kids. And it's like, oh yeah, like this is how we're going to do sleep schedule. This is how I would do diapers. This is how I
will never let my kids watch TV.
Yeah.
They will never have an iPad.
Do you want to get anything done in your life? Like, listen, if you're one of those that like you've figured this out how your kids don't do technology, you got to write a book and tell us how to do it.
I'm glad you and your one sociopath child doesn't use screens, but for the rest of us, please. I remember we were looking at a car and we really wanted DVD players in the seats and everything. So the kids on trips, and the guy came back to us. He goes, "So here's the deal. It's going to cost about $2,000 to put these in. Or you could just buy iPads for each kid and it'd be about $1,000. So you're saving money."
Yeah.
And those iPads have become the bane of my existence. And at the same time, if I ever want to get anything done, if I ever want to have a conversation with Kara, it's like, hey guys, you can play Roblox. You can play Minecraft, a little longer. Whatever you need to do on
just
iPad.
Leave me alone for a few minutes.
Screens are so difficult for parents.
So it's super. But even like, let's go back. What were screens for us as kids? Our parents would go outside.
Yep.
Like, so they were using the tool that they had in their, like, I think that's just the whole deal. Like, parents were just, whatever tools I have around me, I'm gonna use that. But it doesn't dissipate the guilt. The guilt that I'm like, that I'm not enough, that I'm not doing the right thing, that this kid's gonna end up as, whatever. Like, just what have been some of the things that you've worked through, or what have been some of the things that you've worked through to kind of combat the guilt of like, I'm not good enough, I'm not doing this right?
Yeah, I think parent guilt is a real thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's meant to instruct us, but not to enslave us. I think that what happens is like, sometimes we just get stuck in guilt. I'm a bad parent. I'm not going to be able to raise these kids. They're going to grow up to be terrorists, whatever that is.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like, I think guilt is meant to help us go like, no, like you might be off track a little bit here, but let's just tighten it up in this one area or these two areas. I was talking with a new dad who just got so frustrated with his kid because his kid wouldn't stop crying. And we've all had those moments where you just go like, it's like, I never understood how somebody could shake a baby until I had a baby. And then it was just like, oh, like I actually have to put this baby down that I love so much because I'm so tired and I'm so angry and I'm so triggered right now that like I can't even trust my own decisions. And so I was just like, Kara, I need you to hold this kid while I go take a walk and recalibrate right now. Like I've got such empathy for that. And so I think for most parents, I can't say this for everybody, but I think for most parents, they need to let themselves off the mat. If they're trying to raise good kids, if they're trying to give their kids good amounts of time, but also they're trying to have a career, they're trying to have a healthy marriage, they're trying to cultivate a private spiritual life. Like there are things we're not able to do for our kids today that we wish that we could do. And at the same time, it's just not reality with everything else. And I like when you think about how busy our lives have gotten and the expectations we have for ourselves as parents, like I remember the food that we ate growing up.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
Chicken nuggets.
Dino nuggets. Let's go,
baby. We're eating, and my kids eat dino nuggets and everything. But it's like, now I think that moms and dads look at like if my kids aren't playing basically professional sports as a 13-year-old, if they're not eating all organic food, if they're not in honors, there are all these expectations for parents. And like, when I think about my childhood, my mom was like, hey, I love you. Get your homework done. I'll see you at 6. We ran the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We actually would go find golf balls in the woods on a golf course and sell the golf balls for 50 cents. And like, that's what we did.
Entrepreneur. Yeah.
I don't know if it's an entrepreneur. We just bought Cokes for ourselves, but I guess it worked. But we would just go hang out.
Yeah.
And my mom's not going like, man, I should be spending more time with these kids.
Yeah.
And there's this quote, heard it somewhere. It's like, hey, you're a parent, not a cruise ship captain. Like your job is not to entertain your kids and to be like your kid's best friend and like entertainer and all these things. At the same time, your job is just to be a parent, and that's it. And so like around those lines, when it comes to parenting and discipline and running the ship, not just entertaining, I was always going to have a good time.
Yeah.
How do you approach discipline? How have you approached discipline?
Well, different strategies for different seasons.
Mm-hmm.
When our kids were younger, it was, the original thing. It's like, oh, it's timeout. Like, okay, so like they're like dogs at that age. It's like you got to recalibrate them for a few seconds. Hey, look over here, and then like you
just
refocus.
Take some time. Just take some time.
Take some time. But then as our kids got older, like because I love my kids, like we spanked our kids.
Sure.
Like it was like, and again, people can take that way too far.
Right.
Way too far. And abuse the scripture, spare the rod, spoil the child.
Yep.
Like, but I think having discipline and consequences was really important. Yeah. And then as they got a little older, go ahead. Go.
No, we just, in youth ministry, you have parents that you're like, I would never spank my child.
Yeah.
And I'd always want to respond, yeah, I can tell.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he's in prison.
No, it's just, and like people are going to parent different ways. But like, I also think that's so hard. One of the overwhelming things around parenting today is because of social media and how many people are trying to sell different things and like, here's how you should parent, or here's how you should parent, all these things. I think what happens is that we're going like, should I not spank? Should we not do timeout? Should we just do the positive affirmation thing? Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever tried to train a dog on positive affirmation.
Yeah, doesn't go well.
The positive affirmation dog I have just barks and pees everywhere.
Yeah, like, it's understanding. Also, I think along the lines of discipline, there gets a point in a child's life where they go from baby to adolescent to teenager to adult. What continues to happen, and this is just something that's been so real in our heads and hearts lately, is like, oh, our kids are moving more and more into personal agency. Mm-hmm. Like they're actual human beings who make actual decisions.
Yeah.
And those decisions carry consequences with them. Those decisions carry gifts with them. They carry all types of things. But like, if I, as a parent, like go, I'm going to like just jump in here and where I'm the one kind of like making all the choices.
You're going to fix it for
you got helicopter parents, you got lawnmower parents. It's like, I'm not allowing my kids to really develop their agency where they understand like, hey, if I do this, this happens. If I do that, this happens. So I think when it comes to discipline, it's understanding like, hey, I'm trying to help you become, and that's a key. I'm trying to help you. I can't make you anything.
Right.
I'm trying to help you become a contributing member of society, right? Mm-hmm. As believers, I'm trying to help you become a fully formed follower of Jesus.
Right.
Like, but all I can do is try.
Sure.
All I can do is try along the way.
Tell me about one of those coaching conversations, because you go from like, you've got to train your kids and you just got to tell them what to do. It's all about obedience. And like, it still is about obedience as they get into adolescence. But at the same time, how are you having a coaching conversation with Georgia?
Yeah. So Georgia's a teenager. Like, we'll take the easy thing. Like, hey, your room's a mess, right?
Right.
What I will talk to her about is the future. So how are decisions that you're making today, how are habits that you're building today going to affect the person that, not that I want you to become, the person that you want to become?
Sure, that's good.
So I say, George, like, if you don't clean your room, right, and you kind of let your life and this is your little world, you allow it to become a mess, that clutter, that will continue down the road. And next thing you know, you're doing that with your bills, you're doing that with your job, you're doing that with your dorm room.
Sure.
And I'm like, so I'm like, is that what I try to do often is like, is that the picture that you want for yourself in the future?
Wow.
So it's like, hey, whatever you're doing today, like the habits and the things that you're working on, is it leading to the person you want to become? Because kids are like, oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a mom. I want to be a dad. Like they have aspirations at very young ages. So I try to say, hey, how do I help you achieve that aspiration? And we know this, like your kid's not listening to like, when I was a kid, like that's what Georgia said to me. Both Georgia and Ruby said that to me all the time. Hey, if I hear one more parent or adult say, when I was a kid, they're like, dude, but you're not. And I am. No, it's really interesting.
I love how you talk about moving from telling them what to do to teaching them how to think.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a critical thing. You've got to have the discernment to know when is the time. But really, as kids grow into adolescence, it is teaching them how to think about things, not just what to do.
Yep. Dude, so like teaching them how to think. Let's speak a little bit to the spiritual part of how do I help my son, somebody watching, listening, how do I help my son or daughter grow into a follower of Jesus? Like, what are some of the things that you and Kara have made or that you've seen other parents do to foster that spiritual growth in their kid?
Sure. Oh, I think that, I mean, you mentioned this over the weekend. The biggest thing is, what are you modeling?
Yeah.
It's not what are you telling them? Because like I feel like if you look throughout the Bible, I feel like if you look at David and then Solomon and then Solomon's kids, I think that Solomon's kids saw hypocrisy from him, and that's why they just turned so far away. And it's like the worst thing that we can do is tell our kids something and live another way. That's going to invalidate everything that we say. And so for us, I think it's about what we're modeling, number one. And then two, I think that it's about the intentional conversations with our kids when they're open to it. So this is like, for me, I've got a morning routine. I wake up at 4:50, 5 o'clock, try to spend some time in the Word, spend some time working out, different things like that, make coffee. And I realize my kids want to have conversations. You want to know when they want to have conversations? Not 5 a.m.
No.
Not 8 a.m.
Yeah.
They want to have conversations at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. That's when they're open. And so I actually have to adjust my routine, make sacrifices so that I'm up and ready for when they want to have conversations. And so I think it's trying to figure out when are they open to it, but more than anything, it's what are we modeling and how are we showing that to our kids? And so for me, one of my practices, it keeps me accountable to getting in the Word on my own, but also it's has me praying for and thinking about my kids is 2 years before they become a freshman, I start reading a Bible that I'm taking notes in, I'm writing prayers in, I'm just expanding on in this Bible that I'm going to give to my kids. So I've already given Claire hers. Right now, I'm working on Gray's. And so I'm about, 3/4 of the way through Gray's, where I'm just writing prayers and writing thoughts. I want him to have like this artifact that says, my dad was in the Word and he was thinking about me, and I want him to have a legacy to pass on. And I just think it's so important for us to help our kids understand they're passing on a legacy, like we're passing on a legacy to them, but also they're passing on a legacy. And it's like what Paul wrote to Timothy, where it's like, teach people who can teach other people who can teach other people. And it's like, we'll know if we were good parents and like God honoring parents, not by how our kids turn out, but by how our grandkids turn out.
That's exactly it. One of the things that, cause it's hard. Again, I would just say it. It's hard. Like, cause the hypocrisy that lives in all of us, you can hide it from other people, but the people that live with you, like I'm like, hey, eat your green beans while I'm chowing down on a double, right? Like it does. They're like, wait, well, how does this make sense? Drink more water. Why do kids drink so much water nowadays?
I guarantee. I told you I could go through an entire day in soccer practice, and I would drink maybe 8 ounces of water. And
now you're telling them to drink all this water.
Got Stanley cups that just fall everywhere. I feel like classrooms are outlawing Stanley cups because they just fall down and make such a mess all the time.
This morning, I'm like in the cupboard, and I'm like, why are there so many? Anyway, sorry, the water thing got me. No, like one of the things that I've worked on for myself with Georgia, and really Georgia because of her smartphone, was like when I'm in my Word. So sometimes I'm doing utmost to the highest or the Bible app, something like that, and I'm reading. and I forget somebody who told me this, is just great advice. So I'll like screenshot what I read, like, and how it's impacting me, and I'll shoot her a text,
dude,
with the picture,
dude.
But I don't just say, hey, this is what the Bible says and Dad says this. Like, I'll ask a question. Hey, what do you think this says? And here's what's so cool. And this is not an everyday thing. So we're just working it into our routine. But there was a couple of days I'd sent a couple to her. She never responded back. And then I didn't send it for like a week. And then she texts me, hey, Dad, why'd you stop sending me those things? And I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like,
it's working.
It's working.
Right.
And it's not like we've had these wild spiritual conversations, but I think at the modeling point, it was a simple tool to go, hey, I did this today. What do you think about this? You know, and and that's what I'm hoping that's what clicks for her. And then even too, like the simple thing of praying for your kid.
Yep.
But it's like, it doesn't have to, again, let yourself off the mat. It doesn't have to be these like Jim Bergen prayers, and it's like, oh yeah, you know, like
I pray for my kid every day. I pray for their future spouse every day.
Oh, my prayer for Ruby, this is every day, twice a day with her. Jesus loves you, so do I. That's our prayer.
Sure.
It's I'm like, I want you to know, this is two things I want you to know. Jesus loves you, and so do I. Like, and I know I can do that consistently. I know that hits.
Keep it simple and keep it consistent.
Right? That's the key. Consistent with everything with parenting is just consistency.
Sure.
It's just consistency. All right. Now we're talking about like not perfect illustrations, but conventional illustrations of parenting, like a mom and a dad and kids and a couple dogs, right? That's our lives, right? There's a lot of single parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot of divorced parents, blended families. One of the questions that we got in is like, how do you co-parent with character for your kids? Like, how do you co-parent and instill a Christian character, Christian values into your children?
Man, we've got some staff members who, because you and I, we're not blended family, you know, single parents. And I think when it comes to a blended family, from the people I've talked to, even when the other party is not following Jesus and is actually like mocking what's happening in faith, maybe mocking your family, I think kids can tell what's working and what's not. And so I just think, like you said, simplicity, consistency, and saying, hey, I cannot control what the other party does. I can't control what my ex says or what their stepdad says. But what I can control is what my house looks like and how faith is producing fruitfulness in my life and in our house. And I just have to believe. Again, I've not been there, so I can't say this, but what I've seen from other people, when a house is more peaceful, when there's better structure, when there's not hypocrisy, when there's not bitterness, when you're living out the fruits of the Spirit in your own home, that's a home that kids are drawn to.
Yes.
Because like, again, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It's like this eternity is born into our hearts. Like we always have this memory of what it would be like. And we get glimpses of that. That's the kingdom. And we get glimpses of that when we're living out what Jesus says is right and true and best. And so I believe that our kids can see that in our homes. And so I would say, make sure that you're following Jesus yourself. Make sure that you're trying to structure your home in a way that models the kingdom. And don't try to control the other person. I would say probably practically, if you can get on the same page about what do screens look like, what does discipline look like, what do boundaries look like, I think all of that's important. But even if you can't, what you can give your kids is a picture of what the kingdom's like in your home.
I have some folks that I'm friends with that have been divorced for like 5 or 6 years. I had no idea when I met them, when I came on staff here at Flatirons, I had no idea that they were divorced because they both come to church together with their kids.
Wow.
And I was like, one day we're hanging and I'm like, wait, you guys aren't together? And it's like, they said, hey, we committed to modeling what a family looks like for our kids, to hope that they don't fall into the same trap, the same consequence that we did, having to split up. And I was like, amazing way to take something negative and how do we redeem this? I was just so impressed, so impressed by them and just that thoughtfulness. All right, next one before, and we got a little bit more time. How do you, when it's teaching big kids really large concepts? So like, let's take it out of the faith spectrum, right? Practically speaking, like when I'm trying to teach my kid a very, very big concept, what's been some of the strategy to do that? Like, let's say we're talking, we're in political season right now, right?
Sure.
So yeah, I'm watching the debate the other night, and Ruby comes and sits next to me, and I'm like, oh God, don't ask me any questions, so I don't have to explain. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but like, how do you take big concepts and scrunch them down for kids to be able to understand?
Carl, I have no idea how to do that.
Come on.
Like, do you have an answer?
I needed some advice.
No.
I don't know what to do.
I feel like that's one of the areas I struggle, is just how do I teach my kids how to think about, but I do think it's probably exposing them and asking them, why do you think people think that way?
There it is.
Like teaching them how to think, not telling them what to think. I think it's so important.
You have the answer.
No, but
teaching them.
The old apologetics was just, hey, here are the answers that you need to answer all the questions that people might have.
Yeah.
And now I feel like in apologetics, in trying to understand faith, it's about teaching people how to think about their faith, how to ask these questions. So I really think it's about trying to teach them how to think, asking them, why do you think both sides of the argument? Why do they have that perspective? And go from there. But I think it's so important that we engage with our kids intellectually. That's as mine have grown into teenagers. It's hard too, because there are times where I'm like, I don't feel like I have great answers here, but I do think that if we can ask them, say, well, what do you think?
Yeah.
We can stall and then get time to figure out what we think about it.
Look it up
right?
online.
So just be like, hey, NT, right? What do you think about this?
I think the posture of parenting is just really critical. Like Paul David Tripp talks about this concept in his book, Parenting, great title. He talks about this concept of parents approaching parenting as ambassadors rather than owners. Because as an ambassador, you know that this piece of property, like a car, for instance, that doesn't belong to you. It belongs to somebody else.
Right.
You don't own it.
Yeah.
Your job is to steward it for the season that you have it, and then you got to give it back to the owner or send it off. Versus like, I own this thing and I'm polishing it, and I think all of us understanding as parents is like, hey, these kids belong to God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is, it's freeing, it's scary, it's overwhelming, but it's true. My kids, your kids, they belong to God.
And he loves them more than we love them.
Yeah.
And he cares about them more than we care about them. It's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
But I think that's where faith comes in, to say, God, like, you care about these kids more than I care about them. And if I care about them this much and you care about them more, then you've got a good future for them. You've got good plans for them, that you're going to take care of them in the future. That's the hardest part about parenting.
Yeah.
So, dude, as we wrap up, quick lightning round.
Yeah, go for it.
What, in 2 or 3 sentences, for parents of young kids, like toddlers and younger, give some just real quick practical advice.
Parents of toddlers and youngers. Oh my gosh, it was so long ago. What did I do wrong? I would say, do you? Meaning, whatever the books say, whatever your friends say.
Oh, that's good.
Do what works best for your family. Number 2, and this extends into childhood, stop comparing yourself to anybody else.
Come on.
It's like, it's us, and it's do you. We're gonna do that. So I would say those 2 things.
Parents of teenagers, what advice would you give them?
Hold on for dear strength. Gird your loins. I don't know, man. Like parents of teenagers, I would say help them to think.
Yeah,
I love that. That's good. That's good advice. Just watch watch who they're surrounding themselves with. Ask yourself who are the influences in their life, and make sure that you're connected to the influences in their life. Like all of our kids like have other influences in their life. So it's like I want to be purposeful about understanding and knowing who those others are.
That's great. And then last one, to parents who have grown kids who are now married. What advice would you give to those parents who have grown kids who are maybe in their 20s or they're out of the house or they're married? What advice do you have?
They still need you. They still need you. Parenting never ends. Like they still need you. And I can say that because I saw that modeled for me by my parents. Yeah, I think don't be afraid to do some of the things that you did for them when they were kids, that you're praying for them, that you're encouraging them. Like I think just know that they still need you. And that's going to look different for everybody. But I think when we extend ourselves and it's like, hey, they're living their life, I'm going to live my life. That distance is going to continue to just tear at the fiber of those relationships. Dude,
so good. This has been so fun. Such a good session. Love doing this. Flatirons, make sure that you're around for this final weekend. We got Crawford Loritz, who's just going to drop bombs about what does it look like to have tension in marriage and relationships, and then how do we forgive? It's something we'll talk about this in a little bit, but how do we forgive? Such a big topic. We'll see you guys on the weekend.
See.